Welcome to Module 3 on Neural and Hormonal Systems. And we're going to only review part of this module because it gives you some foundational knowledge for Module 5 on the structure and functions of the brain. And in this case, we're only going to review the neural part of Module 3. So neural and hormonal systems. Why are psychologists concerned with human biology? Everything psychological, every idea, every mood, every urge is biological. Biological psychologists study the links between biology and behavior. We talk a lot so far in the course about nature and nurture, and we really can't discount the nature part without understanding how our human biological functions impact our moods and our psychological functioning. So how do neurons communicate, and what are they? How do they transmit information? Neurons are a special type of nerve cell, and they are the building blocks of the nervous system, which consist of the cell body, which is sort of the cell's life support center, dendrites, which are fibers that receive messages from other cells or other neurons, the axon, which passes messages away from the cell body to the other neurons or to muscles or glands, the myelin sheath, which covers the axons. It's such of a fatty tissue of some of the neurons, and it helps speed neural impulses. The myelin sheath also protects neurons' signals from interfering with each other. The neurons are very, very tightly packed within our brains, so close that signals can interfere with each other. And if we look at conditions such as schizophrenia, one of the things we know is that schizophrenic brains have a smaller volume of gray and white matter in their brain, and part of that is also attributed to a degradation of the myelin sheath, where neuron signals interfere with each other because they're not protected, and that's where some of the hallucinations and other experiences that characterize schizophrenia occur, is because the myelin sheath has gone. The terminal branches of axons, they form junctions with other cells. And it's really important to know that the cells don't actually ever touch each other. When they're communicating, there's a small gap called a synapse, and the synapse is very, very small, but the terminal buttons from the sending neuron actually are very close to the receiving end of the other neuron, but they don't actually touch. So if we look at all this in sort of a specific summary of some of the content in the text, we can say the neurons are the elementary components of the nervous system, the body's speedy electrochemical system. A neuron receives signals through branching dendrites and sends signals through its axons. Some axons are encased in myelin sheath, which enables faster transmission and protection against interference. Glial cells provide myelin and support, nourish, and protect neurons. They may also play a role in learning, thinking, and memory. If a combined signal received by a neuron exceeds a minimum threshold, the neuron fires, transmitting an electrical impulse down its axon through a chemistry to electricity process. The neuron's reaction is an all or none response, and that signal we call an action potential. So on this slide, we actually see the structure of a basic neuron. On the left side of the slide, we have the cell's body, sometimes called the soma, which is a Latin word for body. And it also has dendrites. This would actually be connected to the terminal branches of another axon with a small gap in between called the synapse. We have the long skinny axon, which speeds the action potential or the signal down to the terminal branches of the neuron to actually release the chemicals into the synapse or the neurotransmitters. You can see that the myelin sheath actually has the little clearish kind of fatty tissue, and there's little actually bumps in between. Those are actually called the nodes of Ranvier. That's something that helps speed up the signal. So it's like each myelin sheath pushes and pushes, and it goes faster down to the ends of the terminal buttons, which are at the very end. The action potential is a brief electrical charge that travels down the length of the axon. In order for that to happen, there has to be a certain threshold, the level of stimulation required to trigger a neural impulse. So as I'm narrating this PowerPoint and reviewing the concepts in it, the threshold has been reached as the axons fire over and over again the electrical charge. Now, They do fire, but they not continuously, so there is a refractory period. It's a resting pause that occurs after a neuron has fired. It can be very, very small, but the subsequent action potentials cannot occur until the axon returns to its resting state. Imagine if this was not the case and there was no refractory period, the axon signals would bump into each other as they're traveling, and we probably would not have effective communication or functioning. It is an all or none response, a neuron's reaction of either firing with a full strength response or not firing. The synapse is the junction between the axon tip of the sending neuron and the dendrite or cell body of the receiving neuron. And this synaptic gap or synaptic cleft is the tiny gap at the synapse.